Okay, you guys, let's do this. It's going to be so professional. Like, so professional. Here we go. Welcome to the Live Support Podcast with your hosts, Michele VanDusen and June Colson, a couple of clean comedians who support each other and others through comedy's wacky and winding roads. I hope you're ready. Get set. Let's go. Since podcasts have a catchy tune, we wrote this song for Michele and June. Clean comedians are best friends too. Oh, that's so good. And you never know what they'll say or do. Here we go, sing with me on Live Support. With Michele, who's really short. We'll have a ball. With June, who's really tall. They have fun, interviewing comedians on Live Support. With Michele, who's really short. Now it's time to start Live Support.
The Live Support Podcast is brought to you by the Hot Breath Comedy Network.
Wow, give yourself a round of applause.
Welcome to the award-winning Laugh Support Podcast. I'm your host, June Colson, here with Michele with one L, Rhonda Colson, Corey's friend, Trisha's sister. Don't call me Shelly, Michele VanDusen. And by the way, I don't know how we were not nominated for a Grammy for that. It's got to be the number one podcast theme song of all time.
I think it's the number one longest podcast song of all time. That's for sure. People just scroll past it like, okay, I've heard it once and we're done.
I don't know. I guess I could have made it shorter, like Michele.
Yeah,
really
but
short.
Yeah,
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
VanDusen, Michele VanDusen. Let's talk about what I just dug out of the attic.
Yeah, what is your decor behind you?
Do you see in the background? I have broke out my leg lamp from Christmas. Yes, the HOA was hoping that I had put her away for the year. However, let's talk about how jealous I am about your road trip this weekend. Where did you go and what did you get to see?
Okay, so this past weekend, our son was involved in, he had a thing that he was filming. So we had to go down to Dallas to pick him up because he had to ride down. And so we had to go pick him up super early. And we stopped off on the way home from Dallas. We stopped off in Chickasha, Oklahoma to check out the leg lamp.
Look at her. Look at her in all her glory. She's beautiful. Michele.
Yeah, she's really, really tall. So your leg lamp, there you go. It's the same thing. Just, you could do a whole picture in front of it also. But we didn't just only stop there. We also then stopped off at Pops. Pops is in Arcadia, Oklahoma, and they always have like good food, and they have like over 300 some different varieties of soda pop or Coke or however you'd want to call it. Plus, they have like,
call it? Do you call it pop or do you call it Coke? Like really, what do you really say?
Soda pop.
You do say soda pop?
Yeah,
Okay.
or a pop or
My
soda.
family always makes fun of me because in Indiana where I grew up, everybody said soda pop, but here in Kentucky, everybody that I know says Coke. So anytime I say, do you want a pop or a soda pop or whatever, especially like my kids and stuff will be like, why are you saying soda pop? Like it's a big deal. But this place is called Pops, so they obviously go by soda pop.
So
but
they
tell us
have
about the flavors.
Look at that. They have hundreds of different flavors. So just right here in this picture, where they got bacon, butter, lemon meringue, pumpkin pie, so grass. So like they just have a different variety, and that's just one small section of it. And typically, I like to get an orange cream, but they didn't have the brand that I like, so I actually didn't buy any soda this time. So
did you buy any grass?
Nope, didn't buy any grass or anything other. No cookie hats this time. Not at all.
I just realized I may or may not have. I'm usually really good about, because obviously people listen to podcasts. We have a lot of people who watch our podcast, but they listen. And I don't know that I even described what I was like, oh, look at her in all her glory. So behind me for our listeners, just to back up real quick.
It's the leg lamp.
My leg lamp. If you follow the podcast, you know that people in my subdivision are a little bit, they can be kind of snooty. In the first year I lived here, someone complained about my lady leg lamp, and it's from the movie A Christmas Story. And here's what I want. I want my daddy hot dog. If y'all know him, he is really creative and he's great with woodworking. I need a box that says fragile on it, right? I need the fragile box to
Yes,
go
you do.
underneath my leg lamp. She should be elevated even more next Christmas.
Yes.
So
there you go.
but I love that y'all went out of your way to go take a picture of that leg lamp because you know what it means to me and it's super fun. But you do that on road trips. You don't. I told my husband, I was like, I love Michelle, but I don't think I could do road trips because they stop. They stop and look at stuff, and I just want to get to where I'm going.
Well, we were gonna do it on when we did the show in College Station on the way back, but because we changed the route that we were doing, we weren't anywhere near the leg lamp. I'm like, oh, we didn't go. And Ross is like, we can go. I'm like, no, I'm not adding another 4 hours in our trip. I'm not doing that. I'm like, we'll go another time. So when our son said, hey, can you pick me up in Dallas? We're like, yeah, we can, because we had to take him back to Stillwater, back to college. So it was on the way, like a half hour out of the way kind of a thing. So it worked out. It worked out.
I love how you are moving your hands as if I
Yeah,
had a clue geographically where you are, or where you've been, or what you're up to.
yeah.
I have no idea. But you know where I know where we're going right
Yes.
now, Michelle?
Where are we
are
going?
going to have an amazing guest on Last
Yes.
Support today. So tell us who's on the show.
Okay, so our guest today is a stand-up comedian, a podcaster, a television writer, a storyteller, a producer. He's performed across the country in colleges, clubs, and churches. He's even opened on Broadway for Mike Birbiglia. I can't even say the guy's name. What is it? Birbiglia. All right, I think I said it right.
Birbiglia.
Yeah. Anyway, so he's open for him. He's filmed his first comedy special in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and coming out later this year, he's going to have a dry bar comedy special.
Nice.
So let's welcome to the Laugh Support Podcast, the Adam Bush.
Hey, hello.
Adam, welcome to the show, my friend.
I forgot the goat.
Michelle's Coke.
Oh, wait, what happened?
I'm
Wait, there you are. Okay.
It's Coke. We say
he
Coke.
said it's Coke, and you kicked him to the back. This is how she treats our guests. If they don't agree with her, you're gone, Adam.
Yeah. No, I don't. Michelle, did you grow up in the South? I'm not sure.
No, I grew up here, outside Chicago.
Right.
So
okay, so take that opinion with a grain of salt, June.
Yeah.
Okay.
Every time someone says Coke, I'm like, ew, no, I'd like a root beer. So
I like to think of it as Coke is the dominant soda, just across the board. And so then everything, so by calling it Coke, we're saying everything else is subordinate to it.
This is true.
I just came up with that right now. So that's
I like the polar bears. The polar bears is what makes me like, okay, I like the fact that Coke, right? Is the polar bears with the Coke, or is that Pepsi?
No, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when my husband and I got married, I grew up like super poor. We didn't have China patterns and junk like that. And so when people are like, what are you going to decorate your kitchen in? And I didn't want to do it in something that was, like the ducks or sunflowers or whatever the theme was at the time. So I went to the flea market and I saw what people were selling, and it was a lot of Coca-Cola stuff. So I decorated my kitchen in Coca-Cola. So then everybody's like, she loves Coca-Cola. So they bought me all kinds of Coca-Cola stuff. And then when I got over it, because I love people, I don't love things, I was like, oh, I'll be able to sell this stuff later. That was the game plan. That was the long-term plan. I will sell this stuff later for money instead of it just being yard sale stuff. I still have all of it. I have all of it in boxes. My grandma gave me this. Jason's grandmother gave me that. My uncle gave me this. Like, I can't. So yeah, it's all still here. One day I'll sell it.
Seinfeld's got this great bit about how basically we're just accumulating trash that we won't get rid of. And like the first step to becoming trash is it goes in the drawer, and then it goes to the garage, and rarely does it ever make it from the garage back. And then we put it in storage units, and now we're paying to go visit our trash, which I think is so accurate. And it sounds like that's what's happening with you.
That is pretty much what's happening with me.
Yeah.
But enough about me, Adam. Okay, let's talk about you. Laugh Support, the Laugh Support podcast. We reach out to comedians. We talk to them about people who have been there for them on their journey in comedy. So if you think back, we go back to the beginning. When you first started doing stand-up, is there someone that comes to mind that was very supportive of you in your comedy journey?
I think that maybe it's a common answer, but I think right out of the gate, I got to go with my wife. Diana, Di, as we call her. I think I take for granted. Michelle had mentioned it was a very nice introduction on me, but she had mentioned a couple of things that I did before stand up, and that was writing television shows. And the
Mm.
very first show I ever wanted to write was a kids television show called Pete and Penelope that I created and produced myself at the beginning until a network picked it up, and that required a lot of time and it required money and just a lot of focus for 6 years before I sold it. And
Wow.
I think I take it for granted how accommodating my wife was during that season, because when I asked her about it, and we had been married just maybe 2 years, she just said, as long as you can pay the mortgage, then I'm good with what you want to do, which I always joke about. Like, she didn't even mention the electric bill or the water. Like, honestly, I feel like she'd have a problem with that too. But she was incredibly accommodating. And so with every bit of extra money I had, I was able to do that sort of thing. And the same was true when I became a comedian. Because as you guys know, comedy takes you on the road a lot, or just open, at the beginning it was open mics here in town. And, that's a solid night away. You get 5 minutes on stage, but you spend about 3 hours just going to the open mic and,
Mhm.
being support for other people. So she's always been great, always been great. And not only has she always been cool with me just following those passions, but she's been very helpful. And especially at the beginning, she co-wrote so many of my jokes. In fact, that was one of my biggest notes on my dry bar special, is just make sure that you put written by Adam and Di Bush, because those jokes would not be what they were if not for Di, not just listening to them and giving me her feedback, but also actually giving me punchlines. I'm still a little mad. One of my best jokes she wrote, and that sucks for me, but it's good.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's
I go with
that's
But you're
pretty
you're
awesome.
one, so it's not like, that she wrote it. It's like you both wrote it, because she wouldn't have had a good punchline or a joke if you weren't the subject.
True,
So
but if the roles were reversed, I would make sure it was in her face that what jokes I wrote. So I gotta make sure that I give her credit where credit is due.
And yeah, Michelle, tell him that is not common that our guests think to thank their spouses. A lot
Oh,
of times it's the afterthought at the end. It's kind of
oh,
like the Oscars where they're like, I
oh,
want to thank everyone but and they get it afterwards, right, Michelle?
yeah, yeah. Oh, and
yeah.
hi, mom. Oh,
Oh, yeah. No, listen, I mean, we got a kid and another kid on the way. Like, I couldn't do it. I'm 41. I didn't become a comic until I was in my 30s. So I wouldn't be able to do this without her. So yeah, that's kind of at the forefront of everything.
So do you have a really when you got into comedy, you said you started doing open mics. Did you find a lot of support in that arena, or were you able to find a supportive group of comedians that you were able to kind of learn from or lean on when you first began?
Yeah, Tulsa's great. We have a great stand-up community here, and it's always growing. 2023 has been really good. We have a lot of, I mean, when I started, which was a while ago, we had two open mics that were basically the same, one on Monday and then all the same people on Wednesday.
Mm,
So if you missed one, you were kind of screwed.
mm,
And now we have a lot, and we have a lot of shows and a lot of opportunity. The community is really growing. We have a lot of venues and comics come through that you get to watch, that sort of thing. Tulsa's been great, and we're just thankful that we have clubs. Like, most
mhm,
cities don't have any, and we have two, with another one opening this summer. And so that's huge. So the fact that you could get to perform in front of a live audience, and then we've got Oklahoma City, which has a great club as well. So yeah, I think comics as a rule are even the extroverted ones like me, we're pretty insecure individuals. And so I think we come off pretty standoffish, especially to new people. And so it's kind of a hard shell to crack. But when you do, you find, oh, everyone is here, or I have found everyone is here for each other. And that has been really amazing. So our crew is very accommodating, and it's small relatively, and I'm very appreciative. But I think where I have found my most um, support has been with two other guys who are on similar journeys, but not exactly the same journey. So
mhm.
you guys know I have a podcast called Risk It for the Biscuit, And that podcast follows me and my buddy Chris Munch, who is an actor and a comic. And we have really similar stories. We both worked in the church for 15 to 20 years. So we had a pretty awesome job, and it was pretty cushy. Like we were very blessed. We both left about the same time to pursue comedy. And so he went more the acting route, especially on TikTok. He's been very successful. And then I went more of the comedian route. And then we have another buddy, Gary Hornstein, who was our producer on the podcast, but has a similar story in that he worked at the same church, and he went out on his own to do graphics and video production, that sort of thing, which works out perfect for our podcast because it's a video podcast. So those guys, not only are they my best friends, but they're my people. And so Chris and I perform together a lot, and every chance we get, we take Gary with us. Being on this journey together, and we film every other week, it has really made the whole thing really a really positive experience, because what I did not realize when I became a comedian, especially when I got out on the road, was how lonely it is. Yeah, I mean, it is, especially when you've got kids, especially young kids, sleeping in a comedy condo that didn't get cleaned before the last or after the last comic, by yourself in the middle of nowhere, the reception's bad, is not the most fun experience. Yeah. And so just being able to, I can't tell you how many times I've like been on tour and I've gone on my own and done that. And then like, and then had a show where like Gary could come with me. And so we meet at the airport. I'm like, oh my God, a friend. Thank you. I don't want to kill myself now. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, I really can't stress that enough. Yeah. So those, Chris and Gary, they're my ride or die.
That's awesome. I think a lot of times, I think a lot of people can look on the outside in and they use kind of negative terms of, oh, that clique, that group, that crew, you
Yeah.
can't get in with them. But I think there's a major difference between a clique and people trying to keep people out versus finding your tribe, finding your
Yeah.
people that you connect with, you can trust, you're comfortable with. I would assume that this group that you're with, Michelle and I talk a lot about like not competing or comparing ourselves with each other. While we do have similar journeys, we are different people. And if she wins, it doesn't mean I lose. And I
Yeah.
assume that that's kind of the same situation. How you're describing Chris and Gary is that it's a similar situation for you and your laugh support group.
Yeah, and it's that has been our story. When I became a comedian, I had a larger following than Chris, especially in Tulsa. And so I would put shows on and be like, Chris, you want to open? And Michelle did some of those shows with us. And it really was me like bringing Chris along. Well, somewhere in the middle of it, Chris got super famous. And he got like well over 100,000 TikTok followers and is able to make his living as an actor just off of that. And the roles quickly switched. Our podcast is predominantly his followers, and I get to reap the benefits of it. And so I am incredibly thankful. And we're, because of that, we're talking about, us going on tour together. And it's awesome because it would flip it. He would be the headliner, or maybe we'd co-headline, something like that. So yeah, I would much rather be in a situation where I could celebrate my best friend and his accomplishments and ride his coattails than I would be just being super, super angry. And I heard somebody say, I was telling Diana this morning, I heard, maybe it was a podcast, I heard someone say, be kind to people. Well, as a comedian, be kind to people on the way up because you're going to meet them on the way down. This whole thing is so unique in that, I got a dry bar special a lot earlier than some of my friends, but then I've seen a lot of my friends like Chris, like supersede my success. And so for one, I think you should be kind to everybody, period. But I understand the sentiment too. It's like you don't really understand like how fluid this whole thing is.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I have to say, Adam, you came into the Tulsa comedy scene at the right time because it didn't used to be where everyone was rooting for each other. It used to
Oh,
be cutthroat,
Mm.
tear the other person down, talk behind their back. It was really, really bad for the longest time. And you came in at the right time where you guys just started off with those 2 open mics, and now it's been growing and it's been flourishing, and it's been really neat watching uh when I see, like, when you have a show coming up and I see who's opening for you and who you're taking with.
yeah.
Like, I love every bit of how it's not just you, it's about the show, it's about making sure that it's presented well. And I have to say, every time, um like when I went to your filming for your first special, that was fantastic. You had your audience was filled with your friends
Mm.
and fans, and you uplifted everyone there. Like, you brought the storyteller guy.
Yeah.
I've never seen him before. He's so good. But
Yeah.
because you've gone to all these different open mics and you go to storytelling and all that, it was so neat to see how you put that all together. So I really admire how much positiveness you're bringing into the community scene, the comedy scene here in Tulsa. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Oh yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. I think it can be really easy, and I've done it. It can be really easy to take as a comic. Like,
Mhm.
can I get on your show? Can I come to your open mic? Can you give me on the list? Can I go early? That sort of thing. I've done those things, and there's a time and place where you can ask like, any chance I could get on a little early. Uh, excuse me. But what I hope I'm able to do is is also give other comics an opportunity
Mhm.
um, with shows. I mean, stage time. That's the gold, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the money. So being like it really does bring me a joy to be able to, Michelle and I did a show in Bartlesville that was really fun, and even to be like, hey, do you want to do this thing? And they're paying us. Like, that to me means a lot because I appreciate it when other people do it to me. And so I can't do an open mic every week. I just am not in town enough. But as much as I can, I really, really, really hope that people would uh, see me as a comic who, gives some stage time as well, because
Mhm.
that's a big deal.
That is a big deal. I can say that, when you guys were coming to the CCA retreat in Indianapolis.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Michelle was super excited. Everything that I've heard her say about you has always been extremely positive, and I think it just has a lot of respect for you, Adam, and the amount of talent that you have, and how kind you are to other people. And as we were looking at the register, the list, and who was coming, she was like, "Oh man, you have to meet Adam and Isaac as well. That was with
yeah.
you." And just had such wonderful things to say about you. With that being said, tell us what a diva Michelle is to work with, because I
Oh,
hear
really
she is
the
a
worst.
nightmare.
It really is bad. It's just the Michelle show all the time, and I get it. Okay. No, Michelle really does. Not. I mean, I would turn this into the Michelle show. I can't tell you how many times Michelle has messaged me and just said, "Hey, I think what you're doing is awesome. You're killing it." That's an incredible encouragement because you, I comics. I think comics regularly appear like, I don't need your affirmation.
Mhm.
I I know what I'm doing and I'm the star of the thing, but it just isn't. That's just not the case. It
Yeah.
just you just would be surprised at how, and encouragement is something that I really, 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 really value and hopefully give. I would say words of affirmation is easily my love language. And so having someone to just randomly say, like, to comment on like a post on Instagram and just be like, you're doing awesome. You're just like, yes. Because I
Yeah.
mean, how many times have you bombed at a show and you're like, I am
Oh.
trash. This is awful.
Mhm.
So yeah, I don't think there can be enough I don't think there can be enough encouragement in life. And there definitely can't be enough encouragement in like the comedy scene.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned earlier, because one of the questions we ask is, have you had a time that you felt lonely on your journey, because it can be very difficult. You've mentioned that, you and your core group of friends, you guys came out of working at a church together. So that gives the, impression that you have faith, that you have something a little bit more than just relying on man. So I wondered, when you do have those times that are difficult, or you feel lonely, or you're just kind of out there and you've had a tough show, what is your go-to to kind of recover from that and get back in a positive headspace?
So I think practically, outside of just like my personal faith, I think that if you're, for me, if one of the benefits of, like, I do work really hard, and so I work to perform just as much as I can, whether it's shows or an open mic or whatever other experience I could be in where I'm performing in front of people. And so when I do bomb, my hope is that I just say to myself, okay, you know what? We'll give it another shot tomorrow. I think it gets hard whenever you are performing once a month, which, look, we're not all trying to do this as a career. Some of us are doing it as a hobby or part-time or as it comes, and that's great. I think, I would do this if I wasn't doing it professionally. But it gets tricky when you're like, I have 12 shows this year. I have one show a month, and I bombed in March. We'll see what happens in April. That's hard. And so practically, when I bomb on stage, I just try to get back up as quickly as I can. And typically, then the next show is somewhat redeeming. It's not very often that you just are having bomb after bomb after bomb after bomb if you're trying to perform, 4 nights.
Welcome to my career. Oh,
yeah. You do have seasons, and so take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. But I think the short answer is I try to get back on stage as quickly as I can so that I can remind myself, okay, you're not terrible at this. So that's something. In regards to my personal faith, I mean, if you follow my Instagram for 5 minutes, you'll see that I'm a Jesus guy. And this is not true of comedy. It's just true of work. It's easy to put your identity into your work or your family or whatever passion you have. That doesn't work. It almost works until it doesn't, 100% of the time. And so having my identity rooted in who I am, in my relationship with God and my relationship with Jesus Christ, does thankfully supersede the worst bomb I could have. And I've had really bad bombs. I've had shows that I thought were going to go great and really help my career, and then they didn't. And so it doesn't mean that it doesn't feel good or that it feels fine. They do still feel bad, but being able to stop and remind myself, this is not who I am. I'm not Adam Bush the comedian. I do comedy, but I am Adam Bush, a child of God, is a much better position to be in than the opposite, whatever that would be. Adam Bush the bomber. So I don't know. Does that answer the question? Hopefully.
No, say more.
Okay. No. That's kind of discouraging, Michelle.
So typically we ask our guest, a piece of advice. If there's something that someone has given you along your journey in comedy that you just consistently have carried it through, and it could be in your writing, it could be in your comedy, or any place in life where you go, yeah, that's just a go-to that I always come back to.
Yes, I have two, and okay. So the first thing is, that I got my start in comedy by winning a contest on Instagram to open up for Mike Birbiglia on Broadway. That was the beginning. So my first time ever performing was at the Court Theater just off Times Square. It's a very unique situation, and I'm very grateful. But my big fear of the night was that all the people who had worked so hard to buy their Broadway ticket to see one of their favorite comedians, Mike Birbiglia, that when I stepped onto the stage, they were just not going to be on my side and be like, get through this guy so we can get to Mike. Right before I went on stage, Mike came up to me and said some words that I just think about all the time. He said, hey man, whatever you do, Oh, no, he said, you listen, you can't mess this up. Whatever you do, that's the show, and it's going to be great. And he was right, because, and I think I've found that truth to be even more honest the longer I've been a comic, because it wasn't just about that show. That show did go great. Everyone was on my side. I think what I didn't expect was everyone was just like, one of us, this is awesome. And they were like, they laughed harder than they should have and clapped. And I think they gave me a standing ovation after like 3 minutes. So it just was, they were an amazing audience. But what I found that is that even when I bomb, it was great, because it showed me what doesn't work, or it taught me something that was that I needed to learn for my career. I was in New York early on in my career, and I did a show, and it was 7 minutes, and the first 3 minutes went great, and the last 4 minutes it was crickets. It's because my last 4 minutes was all about growing up in Louisiana. Louisiana is very far from New York, so no one knows anything about Louisiana. And right then, I learned one of the most valuable lessons about regional comedy, in that you've just got to make sure that the people that you're performing for have the mental real estate, so that you guys can be on the same foundation from the get-go. And that's why parenting stuff works great, and stuff about your parents, because everybody, is in those sorts of relationships. So you can't mess it up. Whatever you do, that's the show, and it's going to be great. That's the number one thing that I think about. The number two thing is, the day after I filmed my Dry Bar special, I met one of my favorite comedians of all time, Nate Bargatze.
Yes.
And I asked him, you got any advice for me? And he said, find your crew and find your niche. And so I didn't realize what Chris and Gary were for me. I mean, I just thought they were my best friends, and that's great. But what I realized after he said that was, they're my crew. So we have our text thread. When Chris, the other day, he had a video blow up, and the director Taika Waititi, who directed Thor Ragnarok, liked his video, and he just texted us a screenshot so we could celebrate. It's a small win, but it's so cool. And then when I finally saw my Dry Bar and approved it, I texted him, I got the Dry Bar. It is finished. In the words of Jesus.
Yes. Yes.
So that's my crew. And whenever one of us, is bombing or in a cabin in the woods or whatever, we're texting each other. So that's my crew. But then the part about my lane is, like, I offer a specific kind of comedy. I just happen to be a clean comic. I'm just kind of there's a lot of clean comics that's not their lifestyle. That's just kind of my lifestyle. Like, I have a 4-year-old, I got a kid on the way. I'm a church guy. I tell a lot of stories about parenting and growing up in Louisiana and things like that. I'm a clean comic. I'm also a storyteller. Like, that's what my background is in. And so I tell longer stories. And so I could look at my buddy Chris and how well he's doing online. He does characters. And I could be like, man, I should do characters.
Right.
That's not my lane, man. I'm not a great actor. I'm a good storyteller. And I have found that the videos that I have posted that have been more story driven have done the best. And so whenever I look at someone else and I'm immediately jealous of their success, I remind myself of the talents that God has given me, and I stay in that lane. And that's been really helpful. And it's also helped me know what shows to ask to jump on, or what areas to try to be on. Dry Bar, it's perfect for me. I'm already a clean comic. That's great. I'll have, comedy is about a lot of open doors, because there's so many things you can do. There's a group of comics in town that I love. I'm not their style. I would not be good on their shows. So if one of them says, you want to do this show, I'm pretty quick to be like, I don't think I probably should do that. I don't think it'd be good for you or for me. There's this show they do every month, this roast battle, where we all know what a roast battle is.
Yes. Yeah.
I get asked all the time to do that. The guy who puts it on, it's awesome. And we perform together. I just would be bad. It's not gonna go good. Me trying to just roast someone. I'd just be like, I don't know, you're not doing great. I don't. It just would be bad.
Right.
Yeah.
I think if you put a spin on that roast, like,
But
like made it all positive, like
I
over
know.
positive, that would be so funny.
Mhm.
Yeah. So yeah. So I'm things that are dirtier like that is just not me. And I did a show in a bar in Oklahoma City last month. And I bombed so hard. They could just care less about my jokes about my kid not pooping in the toilet. It just was it. I got off stage, I got my money and texted Diana. I was just like, okay, good experience. Not a great crowd for Adam.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah. Yeah. Those are the two pieces of advice from two of maybe my top two favorite comedians.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I don't mean to brag, but Stephen Bargatze is our friend here at the Live Sport Podcast.
I'm
He's
ready for you to introduce me. I love it. Yeah, I want to meet the whole family. I'm a Bergazzi fan through and through.
yeah, everybody loves Nate, but I love Stephen. Michelle will tell you he stole a
Oh,
piece of my heart a couple years ago, and so yeah, I'm over I'm over all the rest. It's
well,
just but
my friend that you mentioned earlier, comedian Isaac Whitty, he told me something pretty smart at the beginning. He said, never go after a singing comedian or a magician.
oh, yes.
He said, even if they're bad, you will never be as good as they were. And so and Steven's he's a magician, right? Isn't
Yeah.
that correct?
He
Yeah.
is. He's a magician, and Nate definitely got his sense of humor from his
Oh yeah.
dad and his he's just a wonderful, kind person. But we just had maybe last episode or episode before, we had Brian Bates on here, and Brian
Oh
is
yeah.
part of that group with Nate, and it is a lot of phenomenal people. So I think that it is a great piece of advice, and I love that you share that, because that's how Laugh Support started. Michelle is my crew, and
Yeah.
it is not something to take for granted. When you have people, it is nice, right? When you reach out to someone like your wife and you just go, not a crowd for Adam. And
Yeah.
and you don't have to go deeper. You don't have to explain the open wound. They get it. They got you, and
Yeah.
everybody, is moving together in this
Totally.
journey.
Oh,
So
totally.
that's a pretty good Laugh Support to start with your wife and wrap it up with his wife, right, Michelle?
Yes, absolutely. That was fantastic. I love your advice that you've given us, that you've passed down from comedians that have gone before you, that are still going before us.
Oh, yeah.
So those are very valuable lessons that if I think if you didn't get that advice from somebody, it would have taken you a while to learn it. So it's so good that as we learn and grow as comedians, that we continue to pass that down, continue to support each other. So we're all better. And that's the thing, we all
Mhm.
want to be a better comedian. We want to
Yeah.
give the audience an opportunity for them to be better. And it has to come from, learning these experiences from people, sharing that. And I really appreciate you being on today.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing. Thank
Oh
you so
well,
much.
I'm thankful that the guys shared that with me. I think it's kind of like parenting. When you have a kid at the beginning, other parents can give you advice, and you're just kind of like, okay, I don't know, maybe. And then
Right.
you experience it yourself. You're like, they were right. Okay.
Mhm.
I think it's the same way. It's the same way with most things, but definitely with being a comedian. That how many of us when we were starting out, we would tell people, "Oh, I got 20 minutes," and they're like, "You have 4." And you're like,
Right.
"You don't understand." And then you do it in front of a crowd later, and you're just like, "Oh, that person was right. I just got 4."
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Well, Adam, tell us really quick one more time, because Michelle is rolling your social media and website at the bottom. But tell us again, Risk It for the Biscuit is the name of your podcast, correct? So where can they find that?
Yeah, you find it on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So every Wednesday we post it. Every Wednesday, in fact, we're recording this on Wednesday. We're this morning, and yeah, they're 30 minutes to an hour long. We just talk about our journey, and people seem to like it, so we're gonna keep doing it.
It's really, really good. I love your podcast. I love watching it every time it comes out. I'm like, oh, this is so good. So, yeah, if you get a chance to tune in to see Risk It for the Biscuit, do it. Just do it. It's so
Just
good.
do
See,
it.
there you go. Look at that. Michelle approved.
Yeah.
There
And I'm
you
so
go.
glad
It's
Gary
Michelle
finally
VanDusen approved.
Gary finally has a microphone we can hear him. So I'm waiting for when we could see him. Gotta
Yeah, we'll see.
hold his
So,
face
hey,
up. I don't know,
Michelle,
something.
someone's got to watch the cameras. All right, we can't do all the work.
So y'all listen, definitely check out Risk It for the Biscuit, the podcast, and find our friend Adam. It's not hard to find him, okay? You can find him at Hey Adam Bush on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. He made that easy for you. And also heyadambush.com. So all you have to remember is Hey Adam Bush, and you're going to find him anywhere and everywhere that you look for him. Check out his podcast. Adam, Michelle's going to kick you to the back for just a minute. Please stick around so we can properly say goodbye to you.
Got
And thank you so much for being on our podcast today.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. Love you guys. And we'll talk again.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, Michelle, what another amazing episode of the Laugh Support Podcast. Friends, what we need from you, if you're listening, hey, why don't you watch the episode on YouTube, Vimeo, or the Creative Motion Network on Roku TV? You can obviously listen to us pretty much anywhere that you can find a podcast, right? We're on Amazon, Apple Podcasts, Audible, Spotify, Player FM, and others. And y'all go to our social media pages. Michelle's got the email down there too. So definitely reach out to us on our email if you have, positive things to say or negative. Negative's fine too. We'll just make fun of it. So the laughs up at gmail.com. And then go to our Facebook page, Instagram, like us, follow us. Let us know that you're out there because we totally appreciate you guys coming here and spending time with us on the Laugh Support Podcast. I'm going to close it out as I always do with Jesus and Junebug loves you. And I'm praying that Michelle has gotten over this impulse to give us a mom/dad joke at the end of each episode. Michelle.
So what kind of trees have fingers?
What kind of trees have fingers? I don't care, but go ahead and tell us, Michelle.
Palm trees.
Oh, okay.
You guys, thanks for listening. Have a good day.